ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today in the book launch of the second edition of the translated works of Mahmoud Darwish, of three great Palestinian literary laureates, Mahmoud Darwish, Samih Al-Qasim, and Tawfiq Zayyad. It's an honor and privilege to greet you today in this historic building of ΕΣΗΕΑ, the Journalists' Union of Athens daily newspapers for journalists. I would like to thank the Katsikias family for publishing these works and their important role in bringing two historic friendships, Greece and Palestine, even closer through literature. I wish this event would have taken place during better times, when Palestine would be independent, when Palestinians would have their freedom and justice to live in peace and dignity, free from occupation, so that we could talk about the common history that we share with the Greek people, the common history that is deep-rooted as the olive tree and wild thyme, where we could celebrate the many traditions that we share through dance. The dabke as our traditional folklore dance, so similar to the Greek folklore dance. In our traditional dresses, we have very similar stitching of embroidery, the similar cuisine, and the common values and respect for human life, justice and freedom. But as well, the many opportunities of bilateral and joint projects to renovate the preserved Byzantine mosaics, including the third oldest monastery in the world, the Greek Orthodox monastery of St. Porphyrius in Gaza, that has been bombarded by the Israeli military and that resulted in the death of 20 Palestinians who sought refuge there. Dear friends, I greet you today as my heart bleeds as a result of the atrocities, massacres, genocide, and destruction that Israel, the occupier, and its fascist government is committing against our people at a time when Palestine is living its darkest days since the Israeli occupation of our homeland 76 years ago, and under these difficult and unprecedented circumstances in the modern, democratic, and free world. For the past 76 years, we have been subjected to the cruelest form of apartheid and military oppression, land and property confiscations, execution of civilians, including children, and the mass arrests of Palestinians for resisting the Israeli injustice. Israel has targeted journalists and poets just because they raised their voice to break out the justice, to break out the silence of injustice for people yearning for their independence and freedom. Distinguished guests, today in its second edition, the translations of the works of these three great Palestinian literary laureates, Mahmoud Darwish, Samih Al-Qasim, and Tawfiq Zayyad. We explore their misery and suffering for being exiled from their homeland. Mahmoud Darwish came from the village of Al-Birwe, which was one of the villages that was razed and completely flattened, along with over 450 villages during the Nakba of 1948, when 15,000 Palestinians were forced into exile, and when 15,000 Palestinians were killed, and over 550,000 Palestinians were forced into exile. In the 1960s, Darwish was imprisoned for reciting poetry and traveling between villages without a permit, so traveling in his homeland without a permit. Considered a resistance poet, he was placed under house arrest when his poem, Identity Card, was turned into a protest song. Quote, "Put it on record, I am an Arab. I have 8 children, and the 9th is due after summer. What's those to be angry about? This poem is about a Palestinian man explaining his identity to an Israeli oppressor, describing his family, work situations, and history, lamenting the loss of his homeland. While Darwish in his poem is frustrated about the state of his identity and what was his home, he asserts that there is no hate in his heart. When a society experiences oppression and trauma, literature helps its people by giving them a voice, reinforcing their identity. Indeed, Palestinian writers have been noted for articulating their pain and suffering, but also for their contribution of bringing hope and aesthetic enrichment through literature. Palestinian literature is a part of a broader Arabic literature that is linked to the story of the Arabic language that is spoken by 313 million people in the Arab world, and its long-standing literary production. The first distinct strings of Palestinian poetry emerged while Palestine was under British mandate between 1918 and 1948. Poetry naturally reflected the art of resistance. Such poetry lamented the destruction wrought by the British on Palestinian society, particularly during the 1936 to 1939 revolution. During that period, poets such as Ibrahim Tuqan, Abdurrahim Mahmoud, and Abu Salma al-Karmi mourned the loss of Palestinian lives and the creeping danger of Zionism in Palestine. What came to be called the Nakba of Palestine in 1948, when Israel colonized 78% of historic Palestine, had been prefigured in poetry much earlier. In the 1930s and 1940s, poetry sang for the homeland, expressed defiance, and relayed the impending danger of decline and hardship that Palestinians came to experience after 1948. The rise of the Palestine Liberation Organization in the 1960s represented another milestone in the journey of the Palestinian poetry of resistance. Palestinian poets in occupied Palestine and from exile and refugee camps in neighboring countries converged on giving voice to the Palestinian experience of dispossession and to the rising tides of resistance against the Israeli occupation. This period is marked with remarkable poetic and literary output by Palestinian poets and novelists, including the iconic Palestinian novelist Ghassan Kanafani, who was assassinated by Israel in 1972, and the great Palestinian poets Mahmoud Darwish, Samih al-Qasim, Fadwa Tuqan, and Tawfiq Zayyad. The theme of Sumud literally translates perseverance, which became a major literary theme as a form of resistance and played an important role in Zayyad's poetry. He is particularly well known for his poem, Here We Will Stay, in Lida, in Ramla, in the Galilee, we shall remain, like a wall upon your chest, and in your throat, like a shard of glass. A cactus thorn, and in your eyes, a sandstorm. Those writers revolutionized Palestinian writing and made a distinct contribution to the literature of resistance against the Israeli colonization of our homeland. Among all these important figures, Darwish's came to symbolize Palestinian poetry at its most sublime and popularity in Palestine and the Arab world more broadly. Quoting from Mahmoud Darwish, "Our body parts are our names. Besiege your siege with madness. Your loved ones have gone. Gone, you either have to be or you will not be." Due to the indiscriminate killing of our children and women, parents started to write the names of their children on their legs in Gaza, on their body parts. So when they are martyred, the emergency teams are able to identify them to record their death, or if they are traumatized, unable to speak, that they are identified and connected with other family members. This poem was written over 50 years ago, and his word echoed to this modern time in the 21st century. That is the power of poetry. The poets we celebrate tonight are not mere wordsmiths. They are architects of revolution, constructing bridges between the present and the future, liberated from the shackles of inequality. Their verses are not passive observations. They are incantations that summon courage, resilience, and the collective strength needed to dismantle oppressive structures. Distinguished guests, in blatant defiance of the International Court of Justice, binding order indicating provisional measures in the case of South Africa against Israel under the Genocide Convention, Israel persists with its genocidal assault in the Gaza Strip, killing at least 6,500 more Palestinians and injuring 11,000 others in just the 2 months since the court's historic ruling on 26th of January. The court ordered Israel to, inter alia, prevent the commission of all acts under Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group's conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Yet Israel has ignored this order, permitting and commanding its ruthless occupying forces and settler militias to continue to kill, maim, and wreak more havoc and destruction, deliberately endangering the survival of Palestinian civilians and bent on inflicting maximum pain and loss. Israel's Prime Minister states, "No one will stop us, not The Hague, not the axis of evil, and not anyone else." In contempt of the International Court of Justice, Israeli government officials and military commanders continue their barrage of incitement and dehumanization against Palestinians, unflinching in their calls for killing and annihilation in Gaza. Israel is committing genocide every hour in Palestine. And as I address you all, a Palestinian child has been killed. A Palestinian child is killed every 8 minutes. 13,000 innocent Palestinian children have been killed until today. For the past 174 days, 32,500 innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. Many pregnant women with unborn babies have been killed. 75,000 severely injured, 72% of them children, women, and the elderly. More than 8,000 humans, men, women, and children, remain buried under the rubble, denied in death the dignity they have been denied in life, along with hundreds of bodies exhumed and defiled by Israel's destruction of cemeteries and graves in Gaza as it continues bulldozing land to create the so-called buffer zone, in blatant attempt of acquisition of land by force. Again, Israel's Minister of National Security, along dozens of other Israeli officials who participated in a Return to Gaza conference on 28 January, called for ethnic cleansing of Gaza and building Israeli settlements there. 131 Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israel since October the 7th, representing 9% of Palestinian journalists in Gaza. The violation against Palestinian journalists include arrest and the killing of family members. We must also not forget the killing in cold blood of the renowned journalist Shireen Abu Akleh by an Israeli sniper to silence the truth in May 2022. TV footage was recently broadcast of an Israeli drone attack on 4 Palestinian civilians walking amongst the rubble of demolished buildings in Gaza. They posed no threat, yet they were murdered in cold blood with missiles from an Israeli drone. 2 weeks ago, while Palestinian civilians were desperately collecting international humanitarian aid to survive the starvation, Israeli tanks fired on them, killing 104 civilians and injuring over 700 in the center of Gaza. The casualties of the Israeli genocide in Gaza alone represents 5% of the population of Gaza. If we had a larger population, 100 million population, that would represent 5 million people. The casualty, at what percentage will the world hold Israel accountable to genocide and force it to comply with international law? A couple of days ago was World Water Day, yet the Israeli occupation has been stealing our resources and water for decades, depriving the Palestinian people of the right to water. And from the first day of the Israeli war on Gaza, Israel stopped all water services and prevented all access of humanitarian aid, including the basic and vital resource for life: water, food, medicines, electricity, fuel, and shelter to the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. Moreover, hospitals and other civilian infrastructure continue to be systematically attacked and destroyed by Israel, undermining the provision of essential humanitarian services and hastening unlivable conditions in Gaza. Al-Shifa Hospital remains to be occupied by the Israeli army for the 10th consecutive day, preventing access to the wounded. Only 6 hospitals and medical facilities out of 35 are partially functioning in Gaza, with oxygen supplies depleted. Emergency medical treatment has stopped in many hospitals in Gaza. As a result of famine in Gaza, Palestinians were forced to grind animal feed to be able to feed their children. And now even that has finished. How inhumane is that? UNICEF officials in Gaza say hospital wards are full of skeletal children after witnessing starving young children die in front of their parents. 50 Palestinian children have already died of severe malnutrition and thirst. 800,000 Palestinians now face catastrophic levels of hunger and thirst. Our fathers and mothers die 1,000 times when their children tell them that they are hungry, or that they are feeling sick, or that they are cold, and the parents feel helpless to provide. For the past 174 days, Israel has been bombarding all homes and infrastructure, attacking hospitals and shelters. 70% of homes are uninhabitable or completely flattened. There is no safe shelter. Even Rafah in the south of Gaza is being bombarded, where 1.5 million Palestinians were forcibly displaced. Now we witness children crying in despair, saying we have nowhere to go to be safe. I lost my father, my mother, and my family. Again and again, we become refugees in our own homeland. The genocide is also being committed in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Over 465 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli forces and settlers since October the 7th in the West Bank, with over 9,000 Palestinians jailed by Israel for resisting the occupation. Yet, the world is crippled from preventing these atrocities. All these atrocities are well planned within the framework of a clear colonial plan that aims to destroy all aspects of life in the Gaza Strip and to divide the state of Palestine into 2 separate countries and to force our people to leave their homeland with the return of illegal Israeli settlement, with Israeli leaders calling for genocide and mass expulsion of our people, not just from the Gaza Strip, but also from the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. We welcome the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2728 calling for a ceasefire, but it is the duty of the members of the United Nations to enforce the ceasefire. We also welcome Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, and Malta's statement to recognize the state of Palestine. The best time to recognize the state of Palestine is now, because every minute another innocent life is lost in Palestine. To our Greek friends, I appeal to you and through you to call on the Greek government to recognize the state of Palestine on the pre-4th of June 1967 border with East Jerusalem, our capital. This recognition is important because it sets the borders of the ever-expanding borders of colonial and apartheid Israel, who have broken and violated all laws and committed all forms of genocide and apartheid policies. It has been 8 years since the historic Greek Parliament unanimous decision to recognize Palestine, and today we are farther from peace now than we were 8 years ago. Look at the destruction, look at the number of Palestinians killed. Peace in our region cannot be achieved without an independent, viable and contiguous state of Palestine on 1967 borders based on the realization of the two-state solution. We Palestinians have the right to live in dignity, justice and freedom, just like all the nations around the world do. We call on the international community, the free and just world, for urgent international protection of the Palestinian people and to force the Israeli occupation to stop its crimes and genocide against our people. Dear friends, are our people to blame for revolting against the occupation? Is this documented in history? Does anyone blame the Greek people for resisting their occupiers? The most dangerous in the world is to blame the victim. Today, genocide is being committed against our people by Israel, and are the Palestinians to blame? This is totally unacceptable and refused. In closing, I invite you to take the verses and become participants in a movement fueled by the potency of language and the unyielding spirit of resistance. Let these verses be our rallying cry, our shared anthem, as we embark on a journey to reshape our reality. Remember that resistance is not a solitary endeavor. It is a symphony, each voice harmonizing with the next to create a cacophony that cannot be ignored. Let our collective resistance be the echo that reverberates through the corridors of power, demanding justice, equality, and a future for Palestine and the Palestinians. Don't you stop me, I am dreaming. We lived centuries of injustice bent over, centuries of loneliness. Now don't you stop me. Now and here, forever and everywhere, I am dreaming freedom. By Katerina Gobo. Thank you.